Okay, so after the auditor have understand the basic concepts about a CIS environment, so in this case he should also understand what should be the appropriate internal controls that must be applied in those CIS processes and software. So this is also very important on the part of the entity to understand. So internal controls in the CIS environment are controls over the computer processing, which includes both manual procedures and procedures designed into the computer programs. So meaning aside from the computer programs or software intended for internal control purposes, so the entity can also use manual procedures as part of strengthening their internal controls in the CIS environment. So internal controls in a CIS environment uh, and procedures includes the following. So we have here for the CIS General Controls. So we have organization and management controls, system development and maintenance controls, hardware and system software controls, access and security controls, and data and procedural controls. So we will discuss each of them. For the organization and management control. So this is important also. These controls define the strategic direction and establish an organizational framework over the CIS activities. So meaning this will reflect who will be administering or supervising the CIS processes or activities and who are under them, which also has their own duties and responsibilities, which are accountable later on if there may be some irregularities. So there must be a procedure for the segregation of functions. This is very important within the CIS department and between other system users. So segregation of duties should be emphasized as well to prevent fraud, possible fraud that may occur because of incompatible functions. So there should be clearly defined responsibilities for the personnel in the CIS department. So this is very important. So this we have here an example. So this is the common positions and responsibilities in the CIS department. So for the manager, he has the control over all the CIS activities. So he is the one who supervises the department. For the system analyst, so he is the one who designs and evaluates the computer system and prepares the program specifications. For the systems programmer, so his responsibility is to implement, modify, and debug the software necessary for making the hardware work, such as in the case of the operating system. For the applications programmer, so he is responsible for writing, testing, and debugging the application programs from the specifications that is provided by the system analyst, but he should not have any access to input data in computer operations. In small organizations, he may also be the system analyst at the same time. So for the computer operator, so he is the one who runs and operates the system using the application programs and instructions that were prepared by the programmers, but he should not have the authority to change the program. Next, for the data entry operator, so he is the one who encodes the data from source documents using devices like the keyboard or scanner. So this function may also be performed by the user departments or by the computer operators themselves. For the data control group, so they are the ones who serves as internal auditor in the CIS department. So they will act as liaison between the users and the processing center. Next is the librarian. For the librarian, so he maintains custody over the programs, transaction, and master files and the system documentation. So if you could notice, a segregation of duties was emphasized in those different positions and their respective responsibilities. Okay, so incompatible duties performed by the same individual may be detected using a computer log. So what is this computer log? So this is a console log that records computer and software usage. So usually this is produced by the operating system. So such log contains a list of interventions by the operator. So meaning there might be an access authentication, meaning who were uh, the person who was the person who performed a specific task. Okay, so that's where the entity can determine if indeed the person who is responsible for such is also the one who accessed, okay, the computer system, to avoid any fraud or irregularities. So those are for the organization and management controls. Next is for the system development and maintenance control. So in this case, these control are designed to provide reasonable assurance that the systems are developed or acquired, implemented and maintained in an authorized and efficient manner. So that's the function or the purpose of our system development and maintenance control. So effective system development requires setting of priorities. Okay, so this can be achieved through steering committee, which are composed of the managers both from the IT function and also those who are using, okay, the computer systems. They will be the one to decide what type of programs or activities should be included. So the committee approves the development projects, assign resources, and they also review their programs. So there are also controls to ensure that all programs that are changed are duly authorized. So this is for control purposes. Unauthorized, if there are any unauthorized changes due to attempts to defraud, okay, by exempting accounts from being processed or processed in an improper manner, inconsistent with authorized policies and procedures. So these are all example of unauthorized changes. Okay, so this should be detected. Okay, because this may lead to misstatement. Unauthorized changes to programs can be detected by code comparisons, okay, where the version currently used is compared electronically to an archived version known to be clean. So this is how the entity makes sure that there are no unauthorized changes, or if there are any unauthorized changes, it can be detected. Okay, so those are for the systems and development maintenance controls. So we go now to the hardware and systems software controls. Okay, so in this case, these controls are built into the hardware and software. So this is done to ensure their integrity. Okay, so such controls typically include the following. So we have what we call parity check. So this is a check made of computer data to ensure that the total number of bits of value 1 or 0 in each unit in the information remains odd or even after transfer between a peripheral device and the memory, or vice versa. So this is to make sure that there is no alteration or unauthorized changes that was made. Okay, so it should have to maintain, okay, the total number of this value even if the data was transferred. Another control is the echo check. So this is a hardware control in which a computer returns transmitted data to the sender to verify if the correct message was received by an output device. So meaning this is to make sure that the data received or sent was delivered to the intended receiver and the content of the message is correct. Okay. Another control is diagnostic routine. So this is a routine within the program that is entered as a result of some error condition having been detected. So and serves also to analyze the cause of that error or even to provide information that is subsequently used for such analysis. So this is the purpose of diagnostic routine, okay, to report any error, okay, that have occurred in the system or in the processing. Okay, another in addition also to the routine or diagnostic routine, so this is a typical diagnostic that might isolate the cause of the error to a particular hardware or software subsystem. So it can easily identify where such error comes from. Another control is boundary protection. So it prevents the mixing of data when more than one file is stored in a single memory disk or several programs are in the core storage unit simultaneously. Okay, so this is to prevent the mixing of data. And lastly is the periodic maintenance. So this is an undertaking hardware computer repair together with periodic maintenance is an effective way to keep some sort of personal computer functioning smooth for several years. So meaning the computer system should undergo periodic maintenance, okay, or upgrading so that it can still be used for many years. Okay, so that's for the hardware and system software controls. Okay, next is for the access and security controls. Okay, so these controls, on the other hand, are security features that control how users and the system communicate and interact with each system and resources. Okay, so it will give the organization the ability to control, restrict, or monitor and even protect resource availability, integrity, and confidentiality. So this is the purpose of our access and security controls. The common system security controls include identification, authentication, and authorization. So these are the common types. Okay, so these three steps must be present so that subject to access an object is made sure that it was authorized and properly undergone a correct process. Okay, that's the purpose of this three security and access control. Okay, so identification. Okay, first is the identification. So meaning this describes a method of ensuring that the subject is the entity it claims to be. Identification, its identity. For example, username or an account number. So this is how the computer will detect if the access was made by an appropriate party. Okay, when issuing identification values to the users or subjects, so each value should be unique, okay, for each user so that they can be accountable. A standard naming scheme should be followed also. The values should be non-descriptive or user's position or task. And the values should not be shared between the users. So meaning there is a unique code or access pass, okay, that should be given to the users, to each user, so that if there are any irregularities, internal control within the system will detect who was the party, okay, to be who was the party who is accountable, okay, for such irregularities. Okay, that is for identification. Second is authentication. So this is the method of proving the subject's identity. Okay, so there are three general factors for authenticating a subject. Okay, so first, something a person knows. Okay, it can be in the form of password, PIN, or passphrase. So this can be used before anyone can access the data. So a password, we all know that this is a protected string of characters that is used to authenticate an individual. Okay, it should also be continuously updated and kept secret so that it can provide effective security. Password generators can also be used by the entity to generate passwords that are uncomplicated, pronounceable, and non-dictionary words. Okay. In choosing the password, certain requirements should be enforced, like using special characters, numbers, or case sensitivity so that the password will be considered strong. Okay. Using the password is the most common and cheapest form of system identification and authentication mechanism, but it is also considered to be least secure because it can be hacked, okay, especially if the password is weak. So what about a passphrase? So this is a sequence of characters that is longer than a password. Okay, so it takes the place of a password during an it can take the place of the password in an authentication process. So this is regarded to be more secure than password because it is more longer. Okay. Aside from what the person knows, the entity can also use something a person has. Okay, something a person has. Okay, so it can be an access key or access card or key. Okay, access or memory cards holds information but cannot process them. Examples of these are swipe cards and ATM cards. Okay, so these are more secure than password but are more expensive because they have to print and use resources. Okay, so encryption is the conversion of data into a form called a ciphertext. So this cannot be easily understood by unauthorized people because this is only given to those who are or those who can access, okay, the data. What about decryption? So this is the process of converting encrypted data back into its original form so it can be understood. Okay, so in this case, encryption is something that only the person who uses or creates it understand what it is. Okay, this is used as a access pass, okay, to access the data. So the two major types of encryption software are private and public key. So this is commonly used. When we say public or secret key, or this is also known as symmetric cryptography, this is an encryption or decryption key known only to the party or parties that exchange secret messages. So this method requires only a single key for each pair of parties that wants to send each other coded messages. Okay, so this is for the purpose of having confidential information, exchanges of information between these parties. Okay, so public key or symmetric cryptography, in contrast, is the more secure type because it requires two separate keys. Okay, whereas in the first approach, there is only one key that can be used by two parties. Okay, so one of which is secret or private and the other is public. Okay, so the public key is used to encrypt plain text or to verify a digital signature, whereas the private key is used to decrypt ciphertext or to create a digital signature. Okay, so this is the public key. Okay, so the third is something a person is, or biometrics. So biometrics are automated methods of establishing an individual's identity. So they can use psychological and behavioral traits. So we have here, it is considered to be the most effective and accurate method for verifying identification because it is something that a person has or is. However, it is the most expensive authentication mechanism. So the common types of biometric system includes voice print. So this is based on human voice. Okay, so the security pass will only allow if the voice of the person who is authorized to access is the one who is speaking. Okay, another is retina scan. Okay, so this is based on the blood vessel pattern of the retina on the backside of the eyeball. Okay, another is iris scan. So this is based on the colored portion of the eye that surrounds the pupil. Okay, another is fingerprint. So this is based on the ridge endings, bifurcation exhibited by the friction edges, and some minutiae, okay, of the finger. So that's how biometrics is. Okay. Another is palm scan. It is based on the creases, ridges, and the grooves that are unique in each individual's hand. We also have hand geometry. This is based on the shape, length, and width of a person's hand and fingers. Signature dynamics. So this is based on the electrical signals generated due to physical motion of the hand during signing of the document. Okay, we also have the facial scan. So this is based on the different bone structures, nose ridges, eyelids, forehead sizes, and chin shapes of the face. Okay, so for a strong authentication, it must include 2 out of 3 authentication factors. Okay, for authorization, this is the method of controlling the access of objects by the subject, meaning user cannot delete a particular file after logging into the system. Physical access controls are also used to physically protect, okay, the computers. So such controls may include the use of door locks during non-business hours, the use of an alarm system that is activated anytime the person or the personal computer is removed, okay, from the location, the use of special room or building for computer equipment, and access to such must be limited for those authorized persons only. Okay, or they can also fasten the personal computer to a table using security cable. So these are the physical controls. Another is the use of fences, motion detectors, and closed circuit TVs or CCTV. And the use of visitor entry logs, okay, to document those who had the access in the area. Okay, so those are for our access and security controls. Another is for the data and procedural controls. Okay, so here these controls are employed to ensure that errors and stoppages in the processing are prevented or minimized. So such control includes operations run manual. So it includes a description of all the tasks to keep the system running and prevent unplanned outages, because in some cases data might be lost. Okay. Another thing is it contains information about outage planning and all special tasks from shutdown to startup, including the procedures for troubleshooting if there are errors. Okay, another control is the backup and recovery. So backup refers to plans made by the entity to obtain access to comparable hardware, software, and data in the event there is failure, loss, or destruction. So meaning they can still um, they can still have the access, okay, or recover the files or the data. So a backup file is a copy of the important parts of the database, such as the control file and data files. So this provides a safeguard against unexpected data loss, okay, in the application error. Okay, so this is for the protection of data loss. If the original data is lost, then it can be reconstructed using the backup. So the common practice is to permit reconstruction of the master file. So this is commonly known as grandfather, father, son approach. So what is this approach? So this approach involves the creation and retention of 3 generations of the master files, so that any lost or destroyed data may still be regenerated from the remaining master files and transaction data. Okay, so for example, a master file, which is considered to be the grandfather, and the first week's transactions are used to generate the second master file, which is the father. So this file and the second week's transactions are the basis for the current file, which is the son. Okay, so that's how backup works, okay, under this approach. So disaster recovery plan is also the process of resuming the normal information processing operations after the occurrence of any major interruptions. Okay, such plan should include or ensure that the backup facilities are still able to process critical applications. So an essential component of this recovery plan is that backup restart procedures have been anticipated and provided for in the application. So meaning they should include it or consider it, okay, in the program or software. Okay, so contingency plans. So this in contingency plans, companies should maintain contingency plans for operations. Okay, this is especially for disaster. When we say contingency plan, it is a strategy on how to recover or to move forward after a certain data loss or hardware loss, okay, is or happened in the entity. So this plan should include offsite storage of important backup files, okay, and arrangement also for the continuation of operations in another location if the main office, for example, is not um, accessible or is destroyed. Okay, so a cold site. So this has all the needed assets in a place except the needed computer equipment and is vendor dependent for timely delivery of the equipment. So they should have this cold site. A hot site, on the other hand, has all the needed assets in place and is not vendor dependent. So meaning this is the location, okay, another location apart from the main office, which in case of any this destruction, so they can still recover or continue to operate. Okay, so file protection. These are the controls implemented to prevent accidental erasure of valuable data on a storage device. Okay, so here there should be security access, okay, for alteration or deleting these files before it can be made. Internal and external labels. So these labels are used to ensure that proper access and protection of the files are um, monitored or is done. Okay. Internal labels. This can either be a header or a trailer label, okay, to determine, okay, what type of data and how important it is and how it is used. Okay, so a header label is a machine readable record at the beginning of the file, so this identifies the file, while the trailer label is a machine readable label also at the end of the file containing record counts and control total, okay, for security purposes. Okay, and another for the external labels. So these are human readable identifying labels affixed to outside of the files so that users can determine the proper use of such files and to identify or determine what type of files are being accessed. Okay, so those are the different data and procedural controls that should be employed by the entity. Okay, so those are for the CIS General Controls.